Askreddit. Urban explorers of Reddit, what is your creepiest, most horrifying experience? Went to a closed-up mental hospital in my city with some friends at night. Everything was cool until we got to the basement, where there were 5-meter wide and 4-meter high lit tunnels going far to both directions. We headed down one end and found a huge active generator, then we went the other way, and as we were about to hit another intersection, we saw two men wearing full green attire and face masks walking at the end of one of the corridors at 2 a.m. We got out of there real quick. Exploring an abandoned construction site. It's a site out in redneck country that's got a bunch of old construction vehicles getting overgrown with plants, and my GF and I decided to go check it out, see what it's all about. We look around and don't see a whole lot. It's about to rain, so we decide to head out. As we are getting in my car, my GF freezes and says, "There's a guy in the woods watching us." I crap myself and ask if she's sure. She repeats herself and says he saw her see him and laid flat on the ground to hide himself. Knocked out of there real freaking quick. I live in a large African city which still has a fair amount of undevelopable space, and one rule to remember is that there is always someone else there that you may not see. There are people who sit alone, very quietly, in bushes or between boulders and other such places. They are, I think, harmless and don't do anything, but what they are doing has been a mystery to me for the 10 years I've been here. Most of them are too well dressed or well taken care of to be homeless. One thing that is annoying is that they stare at you, or at least they don't hide the fact that they are watching you. I swear if there was some completely inaccessible cave high up in a cliff here requiring professional scaling equipment to enter, they would find a local African guy just chilling inside with no discernible means of how he got there. My friends and I used to explore this old factory processing plant, no idea what it was originally. Anyway, it had lots of underground sections which were pitch black even a couple of meters from the entrance, but which also required going down a flight of stairs. One time we found a burned out car 2 to 3 levels down, no idea how it got in there, but that was kinda creepy. Another time we found a hole. We didn't bring torches, flashlights, with us because we're idiots, but we had lighters and were trying to figure out what the hole was or if it could lead anywhere. We put a stick in there and it ended up being at least 6 feet deep, but we also learned that it was full of some liquid and if we had fallen in could have easily drowned in the dark. Another time we went a couple of levels down and one of us at the bottom started screaming shrieks of absolute terror and the rest of us thought we were all going to be murdered. We all started running, everyone was screaming at this point. There was this sludgy crap on the ground and some of us slipped and fell just like in a goddamn horror movie, slipping and sliding, our limbs out of control. Again, there's 6+ people screaming bloody freaking murder with absolute fear and terror on their faces, so we all thought we were going to get murdered. Turned out a bird had made a nest down there and my sister got spooked and my friend screamed like a bench. I was exploring a certain abandoned mill near a large city on the coast with a friend. We snuck in, messed around a bit, and realized that we only had one flashlight. Took turns, weird noises, dark inside because there's no power, evidence of homeless occupation and empty needles. Real horror game material. We come up stairway and turn a corner, ahead is a walkway bridge, aka the way to the rest of the building. To the right is a pitch black room that doesn't feel very nice. As we walk towards the bridge, the flashlight picks out a sign that says "to heck" and points towards this dark room. We didn't go in. Didn't feel right. Last winter I went into this abandoned parking lot under a closed shopping mall. It had 2 levels. The upper level had a bit of sunlight going in through the windows, but the lower level was pitch black. I made my way down this wide ramp that the cars would use and I decided to have a look at the bottom level. After turning my flashlight on, I noticed that the space was huge, much bigger than the upper level. I remember how the light danced through the many supporting pillars and casted vivid shadows. I said, "Hello," and "I'm just taking a look around," just to make my intentions clear, but was met with no response. So I decided to walk around for a bit, but couldn't see anything of interest, just a lot of junk, some empty old bottles, but nothing that might indicate someone living or hanging around there. The place seemed completely abandoned, however this uneasy feeling that someone might be hiding in the pitch-black shadow of one of those pillars took the better of me and I climbed back up the ramp. I left taking different route and passed under an overhead clearing that snow had fallen through. Just as I was about to hop the fence and leave, I noticed that the patch of snow that had formed had footprints in it. I know this doesn't really sound horrifying when you read it, as the logical explanation was that some poor chap had probably taken shelter from the cold inside the lot. But still, being there creeped the heck out of me. I drove a friend who was doing genealogy research on his family tree to an old cemetery that had individual family mausoleums, granite, with bronze doors and stained glass windows, for those who could afford them, back in the day. It had been decades since his family mausoleum door had been unlocked and opened, so the caretaker had a hard time with the skeleton key trying to make the lock work. Finally, once we got inside, we discovered that a window on the backside, along the cemetery property line, back to back with a garage, so you couldn't easily see it, had been broken and vandals had entered through the rear. Sadly, they had pried open the sealed lids on several marble vaults and removed some of the remains, along with rings that had been entombed with the bodies at the time. Calling that dude who went exploring down a bridge and found feces, a blood-soaked condom and a chair and pin-up posters on the wall. Even worse, he went there again years later and documented it, and a lot of the stuff was still there, fortunately no bloody condom. It felt like I was in an episode of Review with Forrest McNeil, where there was something entertaining happening, but I cared more for that person's well-being than any entertainment it was giving me. I had one creepy experience I already told, but my friends who always go exploring told me about this time. They were just following a trail that went into the hills, and after almost reaching the freeway, they ended up near an old closed-up train tunnel. They were able to squeeze through some loose fencing, and after wandering through with nothing of interest, they eventually came to a bunch of shipping containers. They told me that when they glanced inside, they saw a ton of guns and ammo in one and just a crap ton of heavy boxes in the rest. After a few minutes of checking it out, they heard voices from further down the tunnel coming closer, so they got out of there. They also said it almost smelled like the ocean towards the end, so the tunnel might have let out near the beach. Edit, update, some added clarification for those who asked. The place they hiked to was somewhere between Santa Barbara and Oxnard in California, as they stopped on the 101 going southbound and started their hike and ended up returning to the car and going to Oxnard at the end of the day. They made a report to the police, but I haven't heard of anything coming of that on the news or otherwise. Also, some people said it might be smugglers, but given that the crates were unlocked, the tunnel was unguarded, and it was accessible to anyone who wandered out there, I doubt that's the case. If it was, they were either just about to take off or they were really stupid. Nothing big, but I was once exploring a drainage tunnel with friends. We were pretty deep inside of it and turned a corner to see someone leaning against the wall with a hat on. It ended up being a sandbag. Someone dressed up but scared the crap out of me because it was pretty deep in there. There were pants and shoes and a jacket with a hat on it. I don't know what they did to make the jeans look like legs, cause I didn't touch it or go back. A friend of mine went back and told me it was a sandbag and I was already done for the day. Went to an abandoned hospital. There was a large square staircase spiraling up to the roof on the outside of the building, locked steel door at the bottom, so the only way up was to climb on the outside up to the first landing. My buddy boosts me up, I climb over, and there's a sleeping bag with a steak knife next to it on the landing. I call down, we're definitely not alone here, dude. No, but it's cool, says a voice behind me, scaring the crap out of me and causing me to jump and whirl around. There's a young dirty homeless-looking guy standing there, coming down the stairs from above, hands up, palms out. Didn't mean to scare you. He takes a seat on the stairs, so I carefully step on the handle of the steak knife, lean over the edge, and pull my friend up. We had planned to sit on the roof and drink beer, so we offer homeless guy a beer, which he gratefully accepts, and we shoot the crap on the landing for a while. We're talking about the city, the cops, traveling, life in general. He's basically a drifter, been in town for a week or so, but a nice guy. Things are going pretty well when he asks, "You guys are human, right?" I freaking hate it when I meet people that end up being aliens, and you never know until you peel their skin off. They've been after me a long time, you know, they don't stop, they never stop. Sometimes I think I should just kill everyone to be safe." He's definitely not joking, and there's an uncomfortable silence as my friend and I realize this guy is freaking crazy. "Yeah man," I say, "we're human, we just wanted to check out the place and drink some beer. We're gonna go ahead and move on now, we definitely don't want any trouble." He just stares in silence, so we leave him the last beer, carefully back up to the railing, jump down and walk away very quickly, constantly looking back over our shoulders. The entire time, he's just standing there, still and silent, watching us leave. That place is still abandoned, 5 years later, and we've never been back. I'm not a believer in the supernatural, but humans can be deceptive and dangerous in ways you can't see coming. There was an abandoned hotel I was checking out, gained access through a blown-out window near the indoor pool. Smells like death inside, come to find a couple of bloated dead deer in the slime collected towards the deep end of the pool. That should have been my sign to go. I make my way into the lobby and banquet areas, come across a couple of raccoons and squirrels who scurry away swiftly. Everything is destroyed, even the reception desk has been ripped in half. Nothing interesting to photograph, just trash. Neat little piles of trash. After a bit of searching I find the stairwell. There's an odd noise coming from above that I brush off as rain. I decide to skip a couple floors because they're probably in the same condition as the lobby, and a lot of the exterior windows have been blown out. I get to 4 and open the door, not worried about noise as I'm confident that I'm the only sober person on premise of not the only person. As I pull the door open, the rain noise suddenly ceases completely. I point my flashlight down the hallway and see hundreds of geese poke their heads out of the guest rooms. I remember the moment where nothing moved and we just stared at each other as lasting several minutes, though I'm sure it was about 10 seconds. Here I am, in the middle of the hall, geese of abandoned luxury staring me down. Once the initial shock of the sight wears off, I remember I'm only looking at half of the floor. Behind me the geese aren't pulling a deer in the headlights, they're coming towards me. Time to go. I close the stairwell door behind me, only muffling the cacophony that erupted once I moved. As I hustle down the stairs I realize the signs were there, goose crap everywhere. I hit the lobby and turn towards the pool where a group of geese has collected as if they were trying to trap me. Luckily, they're just dumb birds. I got out to find the exterior of the hotel swarming with the freakers. There was one lone sentinel standing on the roof, honking out a shrill command that the perimeter had been breached. I guess no one has any reason to believe me, but a few years back, a friend and I were snooping around some allotments on the outskirts of our village in the UK. It was about 11 p.m., so it was pretty dark. Not a completely pitch black dark, but dark to the point where, if you were to look at a tree around 30 meters away, all you'd see was its silhouette, but up close, you could see enough to navigate by. The allotment was surrounded on 3 sides by deep hedgerows, with trees and then fields beyond. I'm always super vigilant in these sort of situations, so generally I'll stop regularly, and just listen, just stand as still as possible, and strain my ears for people approaching etc. My friend had crouched down, around 3 meters from me, to see what sort of plants were growing, and was pulling at a vegetable that was growing in the soil. Whilst I was listening, I began to hear a noise coming from the back corner of the allotments, maybe 20 to 30 meters away or so. The noise is really hard to describe. It was like a low-pitched sound, that sounded vividly like someone rampantly speaking in tongues, but it was odd, it kinda seemed smaller than a human voice, but deeper. Like an animal, but speaking in tongues. All different vowel and consonant sounds rolling over. It's really hard to describe, but I can hear it vividly when I try to remember it. My friend and I had a system of hand signals, but of course, he was focused on this plant. I was utterly convinced that this was going to be one of those things you hear or see, but by the time you've got someone's attention, the sound has stopped and no one believes you for the rest of your life. I didn't want to move, risking drawing attention to myself, so I just stood, stock still, and made a short, sharp, hiss-type sound, with my tongue. My friend looked up, and I signaled in the direction of the noise. It carried on. My friend and I just stood and listened, in silence, for about a minute, before it started to increase in volume. That was the point where we decided we'd done enough investigating. It carried on as we left. As it's a few years ago now, my sane head just says it was some kind of animal. A fox or something. But I spend a lot of time out at night, away from built-up areas, and I've never heard a noise that I could even morph into that. It was just this odd babble of what sounded like made-up words, etc. But coming from a voice box that didn't sound human. At the time we had all sorts of theories. We knew it could have just been an animal. But there's also a lot of suspicious government installments in the area. Talk of a lot of hidden tunnel networks, and, if you're out at night, you'll often see a lot of strange lights over the hill in the distance. Ha, I sound like a conspiracy theorist. But my account above is true. I went to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Eerie with some friends during the day, and if it's still open you should go. We didn't know the stories, but a few ghost hunters had their gear and told us different versions of the same tales of how the nearby pond was a dump for bodies and stuff like that. Classic graveyard. A photographer gave us the closest thing to the real story and said that he came there a lot for goth girl shoots and to get stock spooky photos. He never saw anything scary, but at night high school kids would come and party and sometimes weirdos would come and hurt animals, but that hadn't happened in years. We came back at night and saw some older kids slinking in with coolers and backpacks, so we started chatting with them. We got the cold shoulder, but we were theater kids and just bounced from group to group trying to break the ice till one of the ringleader types unzipped his book bag and showed us what looked like a robe and said, "You need to leave." No idea if it was something culty or if he showed me his picnic blanket and didn't want to share his bruise, but it worked. We knocked out.